Hello everyone and welcome to my video lecture series. Okay, today we are going to start with ecological succession in plants. So for all those who have seen my previous lecture, we had started with the subject of ecological succession, right? And we had discussed some of the terms associated with ecological succession. For example, what are pioneer species, right? What is a climax community, what are several stages. Then we had seen two types of ecological successions, right? We had seen primary succession, secondary succession. Now today we are going to learn about ecological succession, but only with respect to plants. Okay, so most of the terms that we used in the last lecture, they are going to be used. All those who are watching my video for the first time or who regularly watch my videos but have not subscribed, kindly do subscribe to my channel, okay, and also press the bell icon so that you get notified about my videos as soon as they are uploaded. Okay, anyway, getting back to the topic, so let us start with ecological succession in plants. So I'm going to write down the heading over here. Okay, so now again, just like what we did in the previous lecture, the ecological succession in plants is also divided into two types, right? There is primary succession, there is secondary succession. So I'm going to write it down over here. So this is primary succession. So I hope everybody remembers what is primary succession. In primary succession, in a particular area, no organisms are present at any period of time, and suddenly a new species enters for the first time in that area. That species is called as pioneer species. So then whatever succession occurs, whatever several stages come, finally forming a climax community, that type of succession is called primary succession. Similarly, there is something which is called as secondary succession. Okay, so that part is going to be the same. Even in plants there are these two types of succession, primary and secondary. What happens in secondary succession? See, in secondary succession, basically the organisms or plants which are present in that area, for some reason, due to man-made causes or natural causes, they get destroyed, they get killed, and what happens is that entire area becomes barren, right? There are no organisms left, and then when again a new species of plant grows over there, then it is called secondary succession. Please remember, in the case of secondary succession, the new plants which arrive, they are not called as pioneers. I hope you know this. Okay, so please make sure that you know the difference between primary and secondary succession. Now when we are studying about ecological succession in plants, please remember the primary succession is again divided into two types. Okay, the primary succession is divided into the first type, which is called as xerarch succession. This is very important to remember. Okay, all the people who are giving the NEET exam, this is very important to remember. Okay, Zerath succession is one of the types of primary succession. The other type of primary succession is called as hydrarch succession. Okay, so we are going to study both these types of primary succession. So most of the part of our lecture today is going to be based on Zerath succession and Hydra succession. Okay, and secondary succession we are going to study, it is not a big part. Okay, so let us start with first Zerath succession, then Hydra succession. Now before we begin with these parts, what is the meaning of Zerarch, what is the meaning of Hydrarch? So now xerarch conditions are the conditions where very less water is present in the surroundings, or almost zero water is present in the surroundings. Okay, so just imagine an area which is very dry. It has got zero amount or very less amount of water in the surrounding or in the soil. Okay, so a succession, the ecological succession, which begins with a very dry stage, or I can say that the pioneers first enter an area which is very dry. The plants which act as pioneers, when they enter an area and it is very dry, then that succession is called as Xerath succession. Please remember. Similarly, hydrarch means that when the ecological succession in plants starts, at that time the succession starts with the pioneers being formed in a water body. Okay, so there can be a water body like pond, lake, rivers, and inside that water body the first pioneers are formed. So you can say plenty of water. So xerarch condition is a condition in which very less water or zero water is present in the surroundings and pioneers start the ecological succession. Whereas Hydra succession is a succession where there is plenty of water present and the pioneers start the ecological succession. Is this clear? Now please remember that both the cases that we are studying over here, xerarch and hydrarch, so I will write down in the bracket, xerarch means very less water, whereas hydrarch means plenty of water. Now what happens is, in the case of both these successions, there are going to be several communities, the intermediate communities, and finally a climax community is going to be established. Now when the climax community is established, so if I may scroll down, both these will give rise to a climax community. Okay, and the climax community is going to show mesic conditions. So I'm going to just show over here. Okay, climax community. What is the meaning of climax community? Climax community is the most developed, most complex species which doesn't undergo further evolution. That is the last step of ecological succession, right? So both these successions will give rise to climax communities, correct? So I am writing it down over here, and please remember that when the climax community is formed in both hydrarch and xerarch successions, both of them will lead to medium water conditions. Okay, and those are called as mesic conditions. I will write it down over here, MESIC, mesic condition, mesic condition. So now you have to know the meaning of three words basically. So I will write down all the three words. First word is called as xeric, second word is called as mesic, and the third one is called as hydric. Xeric means zero water or very less water. Mesic means medium water in the surroundings, and hydric means plenty of water or lots of water in the surroundings. So in the case of both xerarch and hydrarch succession, okay, you are going to start with different amounts of water. In the case of Zerath succession, there will be zero water. In the case of Hydra succession, there will be plenty of water. But when both these ecological succession end, the climax community is going to have mesic conditions. That is, in both the cases, there will be medium amount of water present. So you can say that the climax community in both the cases, in both Hydrarch and Xerarch, is going to be the same. We will see that. Okay, we will see how they are going to be same. So I hope you have understood the meaning of all these words. Hydrarch means plenty of water. Xerarch, see, xerophytes are the plants which are present in desert. Desert has got very less water. So anything related to XER, so Xerarch is zero water. And mesic means medium water. You have to know all these three words. Okay, so remember, when you start with Zerath succession, over here there is going to be zero water. When you start with hydrarch succession, there is going to be plenty of water, and when you end both these successions, there is going to be medium water. So whatever you start with, the end is always going to be with medium water. So we are going to see how when you start with zero water, there is going to be medium water at the end of climax community. How you start with plenty of water, there is going to be medium water at the climax community. Okay, so now let us start with the first type, which is called as the Zerath succession. I hope this part is clear. I hope all the three words are clear. Xeric means related to Xerarch, mesic is medium, and hydric means related to hydrarch. Okay, so what I will do is I'm going to rub this off, and we are going to start with the first part of primary succession in plants, that is called as Xerath succession. Okay, so let me write down the heading over here, Xerath succession. So please remember, this is only in plants. So I'm not going to write down in plants or animal. It is understood that Zerath succession will always occur in plants. Okay, now what is going to happen in Zerath succession? So first of all, let me write down the sequence of ecological succession. First of all, the first organisms which are going to come, they are called as the pioneers. So I'm going to write down the pioneers over here, correct? Then after the pioneers, there will be intermediate communities which are called as seral stages. So I'm going to write them down over here, seral stages, or they are also called as seers, right? If you remember, these are the intermediate stages between pioneers and climax community. And finally, there is going to be the climax community, correct? Climax community. Now again, the pioneers are going to start with zero water conditions. So I'm going to write down over here, the conditions are going to be xeric conditions. So when you are starting with zero water, it is called as Zerath succession, right? So that is why xeric. Then the seral stages, and when the climax community is established, the conditions become mesic. So when we are going to learn Zerath succession, we have to basically show the conversion of xeric conditions into mesic conditions, or zero water in the surroundings which gets converted into medium water in the surroundings. Now just imagine, a place is completely barren, right? It has got zero water. How will it have a medium amount of water? How will that be done? So now in the case of Zerath succession, the best example is the example of lichens. Okay, so just imagine a place where it is completely dry, there are rocks present, no soil is present. Please remember, soil is not present, soil is formed from rocks. So what happens is, these lichens which are present, they grow on the rocks. Okay, and these lichens are called as crustose lichens. If you want, I will write down the word over here, crustose lichens. See, what are lichens? Lichens are basically a symbiotic association where algae and fungi live together. Okay, for all those who don't know what are lichens, I have already made a video lecture on lichens. Okay, and I think on the top of your screen on the right side you will receive a pop-up. If you are not knowing what lichens are, you can click on that. Okay, and you can watch that lecture first and then come to this lecture. If you know what are lichens, you don't need to see it. Okay, so lichens are formed, many different kinds of lichens are present. So crustose lichens are the lichens which form on rocks. So these lichens, they will form on rocks first. Now lichens, they secrete many acids. Okay, and what will happen is, the acid which is secreted by the lichens, okay, one of the example of acids is oxalic acid, that will break the rock into soil. So what is going to happen is, soil formation will occur. Now this takes a lot of time, it is not an instantaneous process. So the lichens will break the rocks over a period of years, number of years, thousands of years, and form soil. As soon as soil is formed, then bryophytes will be formed. Bryophytes do not require a large amount of soil, so in that little amount of soil which is on, bryophytes will be formed. Then slowly more soil will be formed by the lichens, more different types of plants will be formed, for example pteridophytes. So shrubs will be formed. Then what happens is, as the number of plants in an area increase, the rainfall in that area increases, right? So when there are no plants, there is no rainfall, that area is completely dry. But now slowly plants are increasing, rainfall will increase. Now from shrubs, more plants will grow, more trees will grow, again with more trees, more rainfall, and finally what is going to happen is, the climax community is going to be formed, which is your forest. What is a forest? Forest is basically an area which is having a lot of trees, plants. Okay, different types of plants are present. So the final climax community in the case of Zerath succession is basically a forest. Now because of the forest, what happens is, there will be rainfall over there. See, any area which is having a lot of plants, it is going to have more rainfall, you know that. So because a forest climax community is established or generated, that area will receive some amount of rainfall, and because of the rainfall the area which was earlier completely dry, now it will have medium amount of water, so mesic conditions will be there. Are you getting my point? So when the lichen started off as pioneers, there was no water, so we started off with xeric conditions. But now when the climax community is established, we have the mesic conditions which is having medium amount of water. I hope this is clear. Okay, now I have added a diagram to make the explanation slightly easier. We will have a look at the diagram over here. Okay, and this is the diagram of Zerath succession. So let me write down over here. This is the diagram which is explaining Zerath succession. Now if you see this first part where I am writing over here number 1, so this is the start of the ecological succession, this is the start of Zerath succession. So there is zero water present, there are no plants present. This is basically part of nudation. Do you remember the steps of ecological succession? There is nudation where there are no organisms, then there is invasion, then there is ascesses, then there is aggregation, then there is competition, coaction, right? There is reaction, there is stabilization. All these factors are responsible for ecological succession. So this is the first part where only rocks are present. Then in the second step, the crustose lichens or lichens grow on rocks and they begin to form soil, correct? And because of the soil, what happens? Slowly other plants begin to grow. So over here in this third part, you can see that small plants are growing, lichens are present, bryophytes are present. Because of the plants, the rainfall in that area will increase, more plants will grow. So shrubs, grasses, all those plants in this diagram number 4, part number 4, you can see more plants are growing. Finally trees will grow. So over here you can see in the part where I have labeled 5, more trees are growing, and finally what is going to happen is the entire area will be covered by different types of trees or plants and a forest ecosystem will be established. So this last stage is the forest ecosystem, that is the climax community. Whereas the pioneers over here, the pioneer community or the pioneer species is when the lichens are present. These conditions are xeric, these conditions are mesic because of rainfall. Is this clear? So finally after the entire ecological succession, that area is going to have medium amount of water in the soil because rainfall is occurring. Is this clear? This is an example of Zerath succession where you start with dry conditions and you end with medium water conditions. I hope this is clear. Okay, please remember pioneers in this case are lichens. Is this clear? Okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to start with the next type of succession which is called as, yes, do you remember, it is called as hydrarch succession. So let me write it down over here. Second type of primary succession is called as hydrarch succession. Now if we see this Zerath succession diagram over here, you can see the pioneers which are present, they are basically coming in extremely dry conditions. But now in hydrarch conditions, the pioneers are going to come in extremely wet conditions, areas which are full of water. Just imagine a water body, a newly formed river, a newly formed pond, lake. Okay, so I'm going to again start with pioneers over here, correct? Then pioneers are going to form what? Pioneers are going to form the seral stages, or they are also called as seers, correct? You have to remember all these terms, very very important in ecological succession. You should know what are pioneers, what is a climax community, what are seral stages. Okay, anyway, next, the last thing that is formed is the climax community, correct? Now can you people help me? Now in the case of pioneers, there is plenty of water present, that is why it is called hydrarch. Hydrarch means anything where a lot of water is present. Hydrophytes are the plants which grow in water. Xerophytes are the plants which grow in areas having zero water or very less water, correct? So here which conditions should I write down when the pioneers enter? I will write down hydric conditions, means lots of water is present. And climax community will give rise to which conditions? It is going to give rise to mesic conditions, same as in Zerath condition, Zerath succession. So I will write down over here mesic conditions. Okay, now what example can we give in the case of Hydra succession? So now Hydra succession is going to occur in a water body. So what I'm going to do is over here I am just going to draw this small diagram. Just imagine this orange color area, which is the land area, correct? And this land area, so just imagine this is a pit like area, okay? And in this area there is water which is present, so I'm going to show it with blue color, okay? And this is the water body which is present. Now initially when the succession has not started, this water is completely free of any plants because the pioneers have yet not grown inside the water. So this is the step called as nudation, if you remember. Then what will happen? Invasion will occur. So the first organisms will grow in this water. They are surrounded by water, so hydric conditions. Now in the case of Hydra succession, the pioneers are called as phytoplanktons. I'm going to write it down over here. Okay, pioneers. Okay, I will not draw arrow. Pioneers are called as phytoplanktons. Does anybody know what are phytoplanktons? So phytoplanktons are basically microscopic organisms. Mostly they are unicellular, that is they are made up of a single cell, or some of them may be multicellular. And they belong to a kingdom called kingdom Protista. Don't make the mistake of saying that phytoplanktons belong to Plantae. No, they do not belong to kingdom Plantae. They belong to a kingdom called as kingdom Protista. Okay, Protista is a kingdom which is a eukaryotic kingdom made up of unicellular cells. Is this clear? So these phytoplanktons, these are basically autotrophic organisms. What do you mean by autotrophic? Autotrophic means that they can prepare their own food. So they have chlorophyll pigments which help in photosynthesis. Everybody knows what photosynthesis is. With the help of sunlight and water and carbon dioxide, these phytoplanktons will prepare their own carbohydrates and use them as food, so they are the producers. These phytoplanktons are microscopic. So what I will do is I will show that these small green dots are the phytoplanktons. These are the pioneers. So they are the first species which have been formed in this water body. Before them, no other species has been in this body, so they are the pioneers. Is this clear? Correct? Now, slowly what happens is, as the phytoplanktons begin to multiply, as they begin to grow, many different types of plants also begin to grow. So there are many different several stages. So first of all, plants which are completely submerged, they will grow. So in this diagram, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show these plants, okay, which are attached to the bottom of that water body. These are the roots which I am showing. So the roots are attached to the bottom, okay, and these plants are completely submerged in water. So the first several stage after the pioneer stage are the plants which are completely submerged in water, under the water, okay. Then the next stage is where there are different plants which have roots submerged in the water. So I'm going to show that with yellow color. So just take this plant which is having roots submerged under the water, but the body of the plant is floating on the water. Best example is lotus. Have you seen a lotus plant? The flower is present floating on the water. However, the roots go inside and they are submerged, okay, and they are attached to the ground below. So these are called as floating hydrophytes having submerged roots. This is the next step, okay. So these type of plants begin to grow. So I'm going to show one more over here, okay. Then the next several stage is a more advanced stage where a full plant will be floating on top of the water. So what should I do? Should I use a different color? Okay, I will use I will use orange color. So if you see this plant is having the entire plant is floating on water, even the roots are floating, the plant is floating. So many different several stages are present in hydrarch succession. First phytoplanktons, then completely present submerged or underwater plants, then plants which are floating but roots underwater and attached to the soil, then completely floating plants. Then the next stage is where a lot of higher order plants or more organized plants begin to grow, and they are called as reed marshes. Okay, so reed marshes is another step. So I will use the green color now, and I will show that a lot of plants now are growing in this area. This entire area is covered by plants. Okay, after reed marshes there is a stage which is called marsh meadow. Again more plants will grow, so I will show even more plants. So with every several stage what is happening is more and more plants are growing. Now what is going to happen, as more plants grow in that area, they will use up the water. See, this water body which is present, which I have drawn, that will get used up by the trees, so that water will begin to disappear. But with more plants growing, there will be more rainfall in that area. Okay, so the conditions are going to be mesic. So next stage is marsh meadow. After marsh meadow there is a stage called as scrub, and finally after the scrub stage there are many trees which are growing and they will form a forest. So even in hydrarch conditions, the final climax community which is formed, that community is the forest community. Are you getting this? Okay, so over here I am going to write down forest, and again finally when the climax community is going to be forest, see, all this water which was present, free water, that is going to be used up by the forest plants. However, because of the forest there will be medium rainfall, so which conditions will be there? Mesic. So are you understanding? Whether you start with dry conditions or you start with extremely wet conditions, you are going to end up with medium water conditions. Whether it is Zerath succession or Hydra succession, whether there is zero water at the beginning of ecological succession or there is plenty of water at the beginning of ecological succession, at the end there is going to be medium water only. Please remember this. Okay, so with that we have finished hydrarch succession. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the diagram which I have added so that it becomes easier to understand. Okay, and okay, so this is the diagram for Zerath succession, sorry, Hydra succession. Let me write down the heading over here. This is hydrarch succession. It is very important to remember the stages, because it can be asked in a competitive exam, an entrance exam or theory exams. Write down the stages of hydrarch succession. So first stage, as I told you, this one, if you see phytoplankton, you can see this area is the area which is filled with water, correct? And this area is the area which is the land area, correct? Here only phytoplanktons are present. Then slowly submerged plants, if you see, the plants are growing completely underwater with the roots attached to the soil. Then the third stage, they have not shown over here. Third stage is a stage where the plant body is floating but the roots are submerged and into the soil. Fourth stage is the entire plants are floating, you can see over here. So this is the stage. Then over here the next stage is, as I told you, reed swamp stage. What is a swamp? See, a swamp is basically an area which is having water also and lot of plants are growing in that water. That is called as a swamp. Okay, so reed swamp stage. Next I told you marsh meadow stage. You can see that in each stage the number of plants are increasing and the amount of water is reducing. See, first stage lot of water, second stage slightly less water, third stage even lesser water. Why is the water reducing? Because more plants are growing, they are using up the water. But as more plants are growing, the rainfall will also be is distributed evenly. Then next is marsh meadow, and I told you the scrub stage. Now if you see the scrub stage, it is almost a forest. And the last stage, climax community, if you see over here, okay, this is the stage where forest is formed. Can you see any free water? No. So that plenty of water is not there, but medium water will be there because forest will give rise to rainfall, and rainfall means mesic conditions. So please remember these steps. If you want, I will write down the steps over here. Okay, so let me just undo all this. Yeah, so the steps of Hydra succession are: first step, is going to be the phytoplankton stage. Second is going to be completely submerged, completely underwater plant stage. Third stage, which they have not shown in the diagram, is roots are submerged and plant is floating. Correct? Then fourth stage is entire plant with the roots is floating. Then the fifth stage is when more plants grow, that is called as the reed swamp stage. Next is even more plants grow, that is called as the marsh meadow stage. After that, almost a forest has been formed. Okay, that stage will be called as the scrub stage. And the last stage is your climax community, which is called as the forest stage. Is this clear? Phytoplanktons are your pioneers, correct? And forest stage is your climax community, and in between all the other 6 steps are called as which steps? They are called as seers, or they are several stages. Is this clear? So in this Hydra succession, we have started with plenty of water and we have ended with medium water. In Xerath succession, we started with 0 water and we ended with medium water. Is this clear? So what do we have to remember in Hydra succession? We have to remember that hydrarch conditions will be converted into mesic conditions, or plenty of surrounding water will be finally converted into medium surrounding water. Is this clear? Okay, so with that we have completed both the types of primary succession in the case of plants. Okay, so in under primary succession we have studied the first part, which is called as Zerath succession, if you remember. So the diagram is over here. I showed you this diagram, how lichens are the pioneers. Okay, lichens will form acids, they will break the rock, soil will be formed, slowly more and more plants will grow until the forest is formed. What is going to happen is forest will bring rainfall, so mesic conditions, medium water conditions. Then in Hydra succession we started with plenty of water, phytoplanktons are the pioneers, then entire submerged stage, then root submerged stage, then whole plant floating stage, then reed marsh stage, right, reed swamp stage, then marsh meadow stage, then scrub stage, scrub stage, and finally the forest community is produced, right? So here in case of hydrarch, lot of water coming to medium water, and in xerarch very less water ending with medium water. Is this clear? So with that, friends, we have completed with our primary succession in plants. Now we start with the next part, which is called as the secondary succession in plants. Okay, now this is a very simple topic. Okay, so next part is going to be secondary succession in plants. So I'm going to write down secondary succession. Now everybody knows what is secondary succession. Secondary succession is the succession in which organisms were present at a particular period of time, but because of certain conditions those organisms have died, they have been destroyed, and now that area is barren, and again new organisms will grow, and that will give rise to secondary succession. Okay, now in the case of plants, secondary succession, just imagine that an area is there where plants were present but now they are dead, that area is barren. So the secondary succession is basically going to depend on many factors. I will write down the factors over here. For example, secondary succession will depend upon the type of soil which is present. See, soil is already produced. Please remember, in primary succession lichens have to form the soil, but in secondary succession all that hard work has already been done, so soil is already produced. So type of soil will decide the type of plants which are formed in secondary succession. Next is going to be the amount of water which is present in the soil, right? Third is going to be the climate or the environmental pattern, how the environment is going to pan out, how the climate is going to be there. Fourth condition, fourth factor which can affect the secondary succession is how many seeds are present in the soil. See, if there are no seeds, then secondary succession won't happen. If there are seeds, then these seeds will give rise to new plants, they will be forming a secondary succession, correct? So all these factors, okay, all these factors are basically going to determine how secondary succession is going to occur. So factors which will determine secondary succession. Is this clear, guys? Okay, it is very simple. You don't need to mug this up or by heart this. It is very simple. If at one time some plants were present, then that means soil is obviously present, some amount of water is present, seeds are present. Depending upon the quantity and quality of these factors, the secondary succession will start. Okay, now secondary succession can be caused by many different factors, man-made factors, for example deforestation, crop burning, or natural factors. Now let us take the example of a natural cause like forest fire. Just imagine there is a forest fire and the entire forest gets burned down, so there are no plants left. Now when new plants grow in that area, it will be secondary succession. So I have added an image over here. Okay, let us understand secondary succession with the help of this diagram. So over here, let me write down the heading. This is the diagram for secondary succession. An example which I have taken is that of forest fire. Now this is a very beautiful diagram explaining secondary succession properly in stages. Now first of all, if you see this first part of the diagram, figure number 1, there a complete forest is shown, right? So the forest is there. Then what happens is a forest fire occurs in diagram number 2, and then that forest fire intensifies, it increases, and in diagram number 4 there are no plants. Okay, there are no plants. So after step number 4, secondary succession will start because all the plants have been destroyed. I can also call step number 4 as which step? I can call this as nudation step. Does everybody remember this? Nudation is the step where the environment is completely barren, there are no organisms present. So after step number 4, secondary succession will start. Okay, now coming to step number 5. Now the first organisms will come, but these will not be called pioneers because pioneers are only present in primary succession. Pioneers means the first organisms to come over there. These plants which are formed in step number 5, they are not the first plants formed because in step 1, step number 2 plants were there. So please remember, in secondary succession don't use the word pioneers. Okay, now what will happen? The seeds present in the soil, they will grow, they will germinate, and they will give rise to plants. That is step number 5. Then as the plants will grow, more different species of plants will come. So in every step, step number 6, you can see even different types of plants, other types of plants are growing. Then in 7, trees are growing, and in 8, proper climax community is established. Okay, so this is the climax community, and the climax community is always going to be forest. Is this clear? Okay, so that is how the secondary succession is going to occur. Obviously the conditions will be mesic, but that is not important. I hope this secondary succession is clear. Okay, so in secondary succession, just remember this point, that don't use the word pioneers because pioneers are only present in primary succession. Okay, so that is the end of secondary succession. All these diagrams, if the questions are asked in theory exams, you can draw on your own. Okay, so that ends our ecological succession in plants, and that ends the entire part of ecological succession. Okay, so there are quite a few terms that you need to remember in ecological succession. Okay, some of them are pioneers, seral stages or seers, these are the intermediate stages, then climax community. Okay, You have to remember that. Then two types of succession you have to remember, both in the case of animals and plants, primary succession, secondary. In the case of plants, primary succession is of two types, right? It is hydrarch and xerarch. Hydrarch succession is when you start off with lot of water and you end with medium water conditions. Zerath succession is when you start with very less or zero water and you end with medium water conditions. So I hope this part about ecological succession in plants is clear. Okay, next lecture we are going to start with a new topic. Okay, and guys, if you like this video lecture which you just viewed, kindly put in a like, do write in comments. Okay, and if you have still not subscribed, please subscribe, press the bell icon, and please share these videos with friends if you think that these videos will help them. Thanks a lot.